Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, digesting the college football national championship drubbing. Also, we'll look into the crystal ball and speculate on some next steps for former Red Raider QB and HC, now former Arizona Cardinals HC, Kliff Kingsbury. What is next for Kliff? We'll get to that, but first, setting the table for Ames, Iowa action. Not that kind. We're talking Texas Tech hoops as the Red Raiders are on the road taking on top 25 Iowa State. We get into it next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Everything runs through Lubbock.
Always great to be with you on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already, so you never miss an episode. He's the only Chris Lovell. I'm Casey Cowan. On the road again. I'd say parts unknown, but I know where Chris Lovell is at all times. He's in Ames, Iowa, as we're having this conversation, because we're getting set for Texas Tech hoops. It's Red Raiders and now top 25 Cyclones, Chris. There is absolutely no rest for the weary in the Big 12 Conference. Texas Tech is that, as we'll tip it off coming up, still in search of our first conference win. So, man, we are, as I said last episode, in a dig deep portion of the schedule. The team and the coaching staff has their work cut out for them, don't they?
Yeah, they do, and I can you could just tell that there's a back against the wall kind of mentality, just because you just can't you can't dig too much of a hole here. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I remember Oklahoma State. I guess it would have been like 17 or 18, and they had a really talented team. They had Phil Forte and Jawan Evans, and they started out the league 0-5, and then they would win 5 straight. That's going to be very difficult to just win 5 straight in this league for anybody. I think you have a chance to have some of your pieces back in this game tonight. We'll see. I don't know what that looks like, but I mean, KJ Allen and Daniel Batcho and Pop Isaacs, they're all here. So we'll see kind of who plays and who doesn't. I don't know what, if all of them or none of them will play, but I think it seems hopeful. So we'll say that. And Iowa State, it's funny because I'm sitting here looking at, I've watched Iowa State play this year, and you prepare for the game. And so that they haven't operated a lot in NIL and things like that. TJ Altelberger just apparently doesn't really buy into it or believe in it. So their stud point guard from last year goes to Texas. And I guess the story is, it's like, man, I can go pro, I can get this. And I think Altelberger was like, hey, man, I hear you, man. Knock yourself out. Like, good luck. And he was one of Iowa State's best players last year. Well, so you look at their team and the way it's built this year, and I tell you who exactly it reminds me of holdovers. And then they added a bunch of old one-year guys that are, because this could be one of the biggest teams that Texas Tech has seen this year. They really remind me of Texas Tech last year because they have 8 seniors. They've added a bunch of, one-year guys, like you did with Bryson Williams and Arms and Warren and guys like that last year. They have guys like McCullough and Shannon that are like Gabe Kalsher and Caleb Grill, guys that have been in the program for a bit, that are maybe some of the better players. And they play your style of defense. They're forcing 20 turnovers a game by the opposition because there's just length and things like that all over the floor. And they don't particularly shoot the 3-ball well. There's a lot of similarities to your team last year and what Iowa State is this year. So Red Raiders are going to have their hands full tonight. It's going to be sold out. But yeah, I think you'll get a sense of urgency from from this Texas Tech team tonight, and really kind of going forward, because they understand, that there's only so many opportunities, and you're going to have to win 8 to 9 conference games to have a chance to get to the tournament.
Man, it seems like they've really picked up a head of steam since Big 12 play has started. Obviously unbeaten in conference action so far with 2 road wins at Oklahoma, at Texas Christian. As far as specifically right now, Chris, I know kind of the big picture general makeup of the team that you just outlined there, but do you notice anything as we sit here in the middle of January or close to the middle of January? What are they doing really well right now as they've got off to this 3-0 conference start, you think?
Well, they defensively, they're probably as good as anybody in the Big 12, at least this early, and they play kind of Mark's style of defense. I mean, I think there's some subtle differences, but generally it's that main principle. But they, you force teams into 20 turnovers a game, and your turnover margin is like a +7 or +8 each game. You're going to win a lot of games that way, because they're not extremely explosive offensively. They've got some scorers that are, Gabe Kalsher and Caleb Grill, a couple of them. But they just, I think that they play well together. You could tell they're older. This is a team that's got some culture. They just seem to have in a day and age where teams are new, and you're trying to figure out who we are, kind of like the Red Raiders are. You're trying to grow up. You're trying to figure out your identity and all these things. It seems like Iowa State got to those, answers rather quickly before most teams did.
It's really interesting to observe this program, Chris, because you have the run that you have not too long ago, at least it doesn't seem like too long ago, with Fred Hoiberg and then to Steve Prohm, and then you win 2 freaking games. Shout out to Bob Uecker. 2 seasons ago, and then you're 22-13 last year. It's just kind of like, it's hard to keep up with, I guess, what to expect from this program. I traditionally expect really competitive basketball, but again, they had a 2-22 season a couple of years ago, and then they won over 20 games last year, lost in a regional semifinal. What do you make of TJ Otzelberger early on in his time in Ames?
Well, he's done a really good job. I think, he's a former assistant at Iowa State. And, I think that he gives them, some toughness and an identity. I think he has a clear view of what he wants a team to look like, the way that they play offense. They want to try to pound you around the basket. And and he's got, he installed this kind of style of defense where there's a lot of the same principles that Mark Adams uses, try to keep you on the side. They'll give up some threes if you're good enough to make them. So that's why, a guy like Pop Isaacs would be big tonight if he can play. But I just think he's, and he hasn't really compromised with his values in that, look, this is how we're going to do it. This is who we're going to do it with. If certain guys don't really see that same vision, good luck to you. I'll go find somebody else, because it had to have been really hard to tell your all Big 12 freshman point guard last year after the season, hey man, we can't really take care of you like that here. Good luck, and then he's going to play against you twice at the University of Texas this year. And I don't know what's true, what's not. That's just kind of what a lot of writers and everybody has suggested, that essentially it kind of came down to that. But he's well known in Ames circles and Iowa State circles just because of his first tenure here. But he's done a really good job, man, and they kind of have the thing rolling right now. And this is, to your point, this is one of the toughest places to play when Iowa State is good.
Yep.
And unfortunately, they're good, and so the Red Raiders are going to get 15,000 Cyclone fans, in the building tonight.
What do you make of, because it really strikes me as interesting and somewhat entertaining, that you say that he doesn't quite buy in to the NIL aspect. Do you know of a coach that's not buying in and having success? I know he's got a top 25 team right now. Well, but can you just be a guy that says no thanks to that in this day and age?
I think that they're just not going to major in it. And again, that's kind of just the word you get. He just, I think I'm not sure that Iowa State can roll that way. Okay, so that may be part of it. I just don't know if they can really get involved at the level that some schools are, just because that they don't really have it like that from where they're located, and from a donor base that maybe not is willing to pony up. I'm not sure, but I just you hear repeatedly that he just, man, we're just not really gonna. And I think some of their guys are getting something. Don't mistake what I'm saying. I just don't think he's all in with it, and we'll see if it works or if it doesn't. Because I mean, at some point, it's going to cost you getting players. I mean, that's the reality of it. But I think he's figured out a way to go get some second tier transfers. I mean, because they've added an Eastern Kentucky transfer. They added some, like a St. Bonaventure pair of players on their team. They went and got the guys that they were kind of second tier guys, and that's why it reminds me of like the Davion Warrens and the Adonis Arms. I mean, it's not these guys were not ever people that everybody, but they evaluated correctly, and it's clear that their pieces are working, and they had enough of a nucleus coming back that you added to it that their culture remained intact.
That's really interesting. And those guys worked out pretty well for Texas Tech that you just mentioned right there a season ago. Before we move away from the basketball conversation, Chris, I feel like, tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm detecting what sounds like more optimism in your voice for the injured trio of Red Raiders. Maybe not all three, but is there one you're feeling better about? Has this been a change over the last 24 to 48 hours, or am I just delirious?
Well, I mean, I am more optimistic. I just don't know, I don't know what that looks like. But the fact that they're all here, is a positive. And I think it's up to, with Pop. I think the fact that he's allowed to travel and all those things, I mean, that's certainly a positive when he's dealing with a head issue. I'm guessing a concussion and things like that. And then with Batcho, he may be, compromised a bit because he's got, an issue with that hand. And when we saw that brace on his hand against Oklahoma. And so and it's a shooting hand, just so we're clear. So he may not be able to, if he's able to play, he may not be able to play the way we're used to, because he may not be as effective offensively. But again, these guys playing versus not, I'll take it 10 out of 10 times if that's what you get. So we'll see. Sure. And then KJ Allen, is may a possibility. So, and I go back to last year when we were here, KJ Allen, he played 15, 17 minutes. It was the most he played to that point in the season, and he did pretty well. Don't discount him being able to help you quite a bit if he's able to get some run tonight. So we'll see. Fingers crossed. I wish I knew if you were 1 for 3, 2 for 3, or 3 for 3 on the availability there, but we may not know until right before the game.
It's just absurd. We're talking about, we could go 1 for 3 on injuries, and that'd be a pretty good batting average for getting guys back on the floor. And it's also absurd that when you're talking about Batcho's hand or wrist or whatever, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, wait, what was the injury originally? Wasn't it a lower and all that? I mean, there's just so much to keep up with, unfortunately, as far as some bad injury luck. But maybe some things turning in the right direction. Either way, you need a superhuman, I shouldn't say superhuman, but above and beyond effort tonight in Ames, Iowa. If you're expecting to have a chance to win this game, be there within striking distance in the final few minutes. And Chris Lovell will be there courtside to take it all in. We'll digest it on tomorrow's episode for better or worse as the Red Raiders and Cyclones clash from Hilton Coliseum in Ames, Iowa. All right, we're stepping away from hoops. Coming up next, we're getting into football, professional and college, because before we get to what went down at SoFi Stadium with the Georgia Bulldogs and the Texas Christian Horned Frogs, and a general recap and a look ahead to 2023. Could Texas Tech be a preseason top 25 team? And what does that mean for the program? We'll get into all that coming up. But first, we're taking a peek into the National Football League, and more so the crystal ball future. of our buddy Kliff Kingsbury. It will no longer include being the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. We know that for sure. But what's next? We'll discuss coming up ahead on Locked On Texas Tech. But first, today's episode brought to you by Built Bar. Looking for a delicious treat? I know you are, but you also don't want all the fat, all the calories. Then that means Built Bar is what you got to try. Just getting through the holidays. I know some of you out there are probably thinking, I need to eat a little healthier this year. If you want to eat healthier but don't want to compromise taste, then Built Bar is just the thing for you. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. So delicious, you won't think they're good for you. Perfect for fulfilling that New Year's resolution. What makes them so good? For starters, covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors: churro, coconut almond, peanut butter brownie, just to name a few. Not sure how Built Bar does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better, they're healthy. They're good for you. Good for the whole family. Only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. You were blown away by that other bar that had 9 grams of protein. We're talking 17 here with Built Bar. You don't need to wait around to get a box either. We've been telling you for a while to order your Built Bars at Built.com, but right now, your local Walmart or Sam's Club is where you can get Built Bar. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today or walk to the pharmacy section and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. And if you're close to Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter, and churro. You can thank me later or just swing on by and share a Built Bar. You got it. It's Locked On Texas Tech with Chris Lovell. I'm Casey Cowan, coming to you from out west of the 100th Meridian, where it's really going down in the great state. Tech hoops on the road outside of Texas. That's where Chris is, joining us from Ames, Iowa, as we were preparing just a moment ago for Red Raiders and Cyclones. Red Raiders always on the brain, of course, on Locked On Texas Tech, and was disappointed to see this week former Red Raider Kliff Kingsbury's era in Phoenix come to an end. Kliff has been fired as the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. Was less than a year ago. He's signing a contract extension with the franchise. But Chris, I have no doubt that Kliff will land on his feet. Last time that he was let go from a job, he became a head coach in the National Football League. He's let go from this job. So I don't know if like U.S. Attorney General is coming up next for him or what exactly is to come on the list. But I still see him within the world of football, I think. I'm curious what you see in the crystal ball and general thoughts on Kliff Kingsbury's first shot as a head coach in the NFL coming to an end.
Yeah, you know, he did a good job at some points there in Arizona. I think, you know, there was – and then it's just difficult in the NFL to kind of sustain it, especially when, you know, your quarterback is dinged up or whenever you don't. I mean, because I think ultimately what undoes the situation for him in Arizona is that, I mean, a lot of suggestion out there that he and Kyler Murray don't get along. And if there's any truth to that, the player usually wins, especially when you mentioned contract extension. The player's got, you know, $200 million or whatever it is left on the contract, and you've got $15 million left. You know, usually if it's just to the point of no return, the player's going to win. And so I don't know how much truth. There's just not a lot of people that have good things to say about Kyler Murray, but I think Kliff will be fine at some level. I do think that, you know, there's already rumors about him maybe joining the Rams as OC. I think NFL OC is really would be his ideal, you know, job. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, look, he's well off. I mean, you mentioned he just got a brand new contract. So I'm just going to estimate that that's somewhere between 10 and 20 million that he's owed, you know, to go away. So he financially, he can take some time off. He can wait for, the right spot, he can decide, hey, I want to live somewhere where it's warm, or I can go back to college and be an OC. I can go do TV. I can do nothing. I mean, he's got, be able to pick and choose kind of what he wants to do. But the Rams, that was rumored almost immediately, and I know he's got a good relationship with Sean McVay. And I think, that I could see them kind of, teaming up and everything like that. So, we'll see kind of what the future holds. But I just think that, and if you followed their team this year, and
oh my God,
no fault of his own, but they had injuries. The general manager steps away because of a health issue. They had an offensive line coach, the former UTEP head coach that was on the staff, get arrested in Mexico.
Woo.
I mean, it was just a circus.
Wait, was that his plane they were shooting at when it was trying to take off? I saw some news about an arrest in Mexico. I didn't know it was Kliff's O-line coach.
Yeah, right out of a scene of a movie. I mean, so it was just one of those, And then if you even go back to before the season, and it was like the Kyler Murray contract gets done, and they put the video game clause in there. Right. I mean, it just, this was just a bizarre, like last year. And so it doesn't surprise me that they're going to start over with a new head coach and a new general manager just to kind of hit the reset button. So we'll see. I bet Kliff will be just fine.
I would imagine so. I saw that, I think this is from Adam Schefter, that the Arizona Cardinals, Chris, have still never had a head coach, not one, last longer than 6 years while they've existed for over 100, which is something that maybe shouldn't be surprising, but still stuck out to me a bit. Trying to right the ship with the Arizona Cardinals has never been any small task. I know hindsight is 2020, but even at the time that Kliff Kingsbury kind of anchored himself to Kyler Murray, I had no clue why. I don't know why anyone would ever want what now is, by the way, been proven to be a high maintenance one, but just in general, a midget dual threat quarterback in the National Football League. What in the world are you thinking as far as the way that's going to go? I thought that was, it proved, in my opinion, to be his biggest mistake of all. And it was like the very first mistake. But I kind of figured, I guess, over the next couple of seasons, I thought I saw some really good things from Coach Kingsbury in that he was investing in more so like a physical kind of offense, ground game, and some defensive priorities. And I thought, all right, well, here's some ingredients for a recipe that equals winning football. And there was a little bit of traction there, but I don't know how you feel about it. I've got no use in general for dual threat quarterbacks in the National Football League. There's like two on the Mount Rushmore of exceptions in my, purview, and that's Michael Vick and possibly Lamar Jackson, I guess. But they're very, very, very rare as far as it actually working out, staying healthy and things like that. But in my opinion, I thought Kyler Murray was the biggest mistake and I guess the first mistake that he made. Do you see something similar, or what do you think ultimately was the downfall?
Yeah, and I can't remember, they had the number one pick that year, and I can't remember who the other choices are, but I knew they needed a quarterback. I think they had, Josh Rosen was a mistake that franchise had made, I think, a year or two before. And unfortunately, man, that like you pick from what is available, and I can't remember who the second or third quarterback picked in that draft was, but if you don't have anybody decent at that position, you're hosed. I mean, that's unfortunately, the way it goes, because the coach can have nothing to do with it. The general manager can be like, man, we took the best guy that was there this particular year and we needed one. And, it's just like that's what decides your fate. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I think if Kyler would have been better and stayed healthy and maybe they got along better, I mean, I'm probably having a different conversation here, but there's a lot of people around the league that are fans of his ability. Then there's a lot of people that don't think he can succeed long-term, but you're right in that, the Josh Allens, the Justin Herberts, the I mean, the Patrick Mahomeses. I mean, there's a hand. Joe Burrow. There's a handful of young quarterbacks that don't necessarily major in the run. And he, I mean, I think there's all those guys that I just mentioned. They'll all use their legs certainly, but
Sure.
it's tricky trying to keep guys healthy. And heck, I think Kyler Murray's injury this year was a non-contact. I think he just kind of, his knee just kind of went, and he wasn't around anybody at the time when he just made a cut. So, no telling there. But I hope, I don't know what Kliff's next move will do or how quickly it'll happen, but he's going to be just fine.
Yeah, I have no doubt about that. I just, someday whenever the pansies that hate football, that run football, totally remove defense from the game, then yeah, the college dual threat video game quarterback will probably have a more extended and successful stay in the National Football League. But even with all they've done to try to take defense out of football, still to this day, you can count them on one hand, the guys that have really sustained prolonged success while still really, truly being dual threat quarterbacks. Not guys that just improvise here or there, but truly dual threat quarterbacks. And that has to be a part of what they do in the game to be at their best, I guess, as the player that they are. And I certainly view Kyler Murray as that kind of player. And regardless of those physical things, what's going on between the ears? I mean, to think about a guy like that also maybe being a diva, high maintenance gamer, Call of Duty dork, whatever he is. I don't know. That's just a whole nother ball game to deal with. So congratulations to Kliff Kingsbury for getting paid to get the hell out of that situation. And I do think, Chris, NFL OC is a place that he can be very, very comfortable for an extended period of time. But who knows what the long-term aspirations are. Wishing him the best either way. All right, we're wrapping it up. Coming up next, sticking with a football conversation, but we're back to the college gridiron, some thoughts on the national championship slaughter and thoughts on looking ahead to 2023. Is it possible that in Lubbock, Texas, America, there could be a preseason top 25 football team? We'll ponder such things coming up next on Locked On Texas Tech. Back at it on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, YouTube, or anywhere you get podcasts is where you can find us each weekday. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. Chris Lovell joining us from Ames, Iowa, as he's getting ready for Red Raiders and Cyclones on the hardwood. We saw college football's season come to an end, Chris, with an absolute thumping of the Horned Frogs of Texas Christian by the Georgia Bulldogs. And now we begin to kind of process what we saw this season and look ahead to 2023. I know it had to do a Chris Level body good to see the people in purple take it on the chin like they did in Los Angeles. Wow, that had to be beyond what you even could have imagined.
I don't think any. I'm still. I mean, I can't believe that. I mean, I thought, in fact, I told you that I thought Georgia would win, but I thought TCU would keep it, competitive, and it would be close. You'd put a scare into the Bulldogs, and that was just, I don't know what that was. That was a historic beatdown that, I mean, there's never been a wider point differential in a bowl game ever before. And I think I even saw that the NFL, that they're the biggest Super Bowl blowout or whatever was back in 1940, and it involved the Chicago Bears. And that's kind of, I mean, this was a historic beatdown. Any other way you want to slice it. I mean, it was 188 total yards to like 500 plus. I mean, Quentin Johnson. Here was the crazy thing. Quentin Johnson had one catch for 3 yards in that game. And that really tells you all you need to know. I mean, Georgia just said, not tonight, man, not doing it. But that was just, and I think that, the Big 12 is going to, or really every other league, you kind of get pointed at and say, see, you can't compete with the SEC. And, this is what we've been talking about. But the last night is the poster child of examples of, if somebody wants to play that card and point to it, because it just looked like an exhibition. I mean, it didn't. I mean, I just couldn't believe what I saw. But TCU just got blown out on the biggest of stages. It reminded me of Oklahoma, Texas Tech back in 2008. It reminded me of the Red Raiders against USC in the Cotton Bowl back in what was that, 94?
All right. This is about the Frogs. Enough Red Raider memory.
But I mean, and those were not, I mean, this was for the whole thing. You just got embarrassed. So I just was expecting a lot more fight and a lot closer of a game. But make no mistake, we clearly know who the best team in the country is. There is no debate. I can only imagine what Ohio State feels after shaking that field goal. Because, I mean, they were right there with Georgia. And sometimes it's like the Final Four or like one of those NCAA tournaments when you see a basketball team that's really good and they survive a scare, and they get past a team that almost beats them, and then they come back and they're like, okay, Now we're locked in, we're back on track. And that's kind of what I guess that Ohio State game did for the Georgia Bulldogs, because Kirby Smart, man, I mean, he had those guys, and he said it, hey, my boys are ready to hunt. And boy, they killed about 110 frogs last night.
Yeah, you limited out in the first quarter and kept shooting. I don't know if that's legal, but it is Los Angeles after all, so who cares? Hey, by the way, I was making fun of a roofed stadium that has experienced a lightning delay yesterday. And what did we see? We saw a roofed stadium with the upper deck of mostly Frog fans being rained on. So I'm telling you, man, SoFi Stadium, it's got a bag of tricks. There's no doubt about that. Good grief. I just think, a lot of people want a theory of transitive properties to always be in place. And it's just a fool's errand, because people will say, oh, well, Ohio State, what would they have done? Well, what did Ohio State do at home against Michigan? And what did Texas Christian do to Michigan? And what does that mean for the Big Ten? Does that mean that if Michigan played a Big 12 schedule, they would have been 3-9? Very likely. I think that's exactly what that would mean. But either way, it was a clubbing of epic proportion. I don't think it takes anything away from what Texas Christian did within their season, but yeah, when you got something as different as that, not just a loss, but an all-time historic kind of record-breaking loss, you're not going to forget that. Chris, as we move away from this season, I know you're already seeing some of this, and I have as well, some way too early top 25 projections, which is now just the moniker that everybody goes with, that include Joey McGuire and his Texas Tech Red Raiders. Are you I don't expect, maybe is too wrong of a word, but would that be appropriate when it comes to Texas Tech being a preseason top 25 team next year? Are you expecting that, or is it just kind of one of many possibilities, I guess, floating around?
Man, I and I hate to do this to myself, but no, I absolutely expect it. I'm gonna be shocked if you are not ranked, in the thick of the top 25 next year. I think that's just where you're at, based on what you have coming back, based on what so many other programs lose. And I think you'll be interested to follow like the TCU situation over the next couple of days, because there's some decisions from them that they've got to make rather quickly. And while I expect TCU to be really good next year, I mean, no Duggan, no Quentin Johnston. I mean, you'll see, because they just had kind of a once in a lifetime type season, and you can talk about trying to come back. What's crazy about TCU is that they won the Fiesta Bowl, but they're not Big 12 champs. They're not national champs. It's crazy. They lost 2 of their last 3 games, but it was a once in a lifetime season. So I think their roster will really take some hits, and we'll follow that. But I mean, but from the Red Raiders standpoint, I mean, you look at, I think that there's going to be 4 teams that get a lot of respect and a lot of discussion as we start to see some of these polls come out over the coming days, and then obviously well into the summer. Because and again, you just added to your roster again last night. We'll talk about that maybe on tomorrow's show about another addition to your roster. But you'll see, I think TCU, Texas Tech, Kansas State, and probably Texas be discussed in a group of kind of the expectations. But I think the Red Raiders, I mean, we've already seen Brett McMurphy had the Red Raiders 14th in a preseason top 25 poll for next year. And I just think that there's going to be a sweet spot there to where you're kind of somewhere between, ranked between maybe 12 to 25, somewhere in there, and I just think that's the reality of kind of the expectations you've got for next year. So look out, man. It should be a lot of fun.
That's amazing to consider in such a short amount of time. And I guess I'm there with you in that I am expecting it. I keep trying to check myself and say, well, why would you expect it? Good grief. You had an 8-5 season after a decade for the most part of irrelevancy. And so now all of a sudden you're top 25 preseason. But when you think about what you have returning, particularly on the defensive side of the football, but elsewhere, of course, big picture wise, and you think about already the skins on the wall in a short amount of time with Joey McGuire, why wouldn't you give him a preseason nod, I guess? And I don't know what it means within the Big 12 or how they'll live up to that. But Chris, I would almost say that it's maybe 60-40 related to the team and the head coach as to what credit is being given that would lead to you being a preseason top 25. 60% roster, 40% McGuire magic. And maybe I'm shorting Joey McGuire because I just know that he's rounding up pundits near and far that are beginning to understand why so many believe in this guy. Do you think that's fair to say? Because I really feel like I've seen some coverage of Coach McGuire as the season has gone on that has more so reflected a bought-in kind of perspective. And I don't mean like Brett McMurphy's out there running bleachers in the name of Joey McGuire, but I think there's some credibility that he's earned in year number one as it relates to media coverage.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I think, and you look at it, this is going to be about continuity and stability. And you're right. I think people kind of now have a feel for who Joey is, the fact that his team improved as the year went along. Yeah. But he's going to keep his staff intact mostly. We'll still keep an eye on things. You just don't know how things will play out there. But I mean, it looks like both coordinators and everybody's going to stay intact. And we'll get into some of those kinds of conversations maybe later in the week too, because I think you'll see some contract extensions and stuff redone, not just with Joey, which we saw, but that has a big reason why on this stuff too, is that you keep continuity. And then I think Joey would be the first one to tell you the fact that at least right now they've got Tyler Shuck and Baron Morton back is a huge reason why there's some expectations there, because you will arguably have one of the top quarterback rooms in the Big 12 conference, and I think that certainly helps. But yeah, Joey's just, I think people have gotten to see who he is, what he's about, and I think that's as big reason as anything, because I think you look at the program. You've won back-to-back bowl games, okay, and you've done it in pretty impressive fashion. True. And he's technically only responsible for the second one, but he was around the team the first time that it took place there in Memphis, and I just think that you can kind of see a program trending up, and he's the one that's in charge of it, and I think people are starting to see who he is. And I mean, yeah, he's a huge reason why I think you're getting some accolades here for sure.
Ooh, that's going to make for a long offseason, my friend, because I can't wait for kickoff. What is today? How long do we have to go? We got a little while, and we've got some other benchmarks to cross as far as spring camp and, this year up until football season. But does the year really even start until football season begins? I can't wait. And, man, much good stuff to chew on from year number one.
And Cowan, what's crazy is that, okay, so that they're going to, unless something gets tweaked, and we should get the Big 12 schedule next week, I think, but you're going to open up on the road, in Laramie, Wyoming. But right. your first home game, I think I'm right there. Your first home game is going to be against a top 15 ranked or top 10 ranked Oregon team. I mean, and that game is going to be like a national. If you're ranked like we think, that game is going to be like a kind of a national type game. I mean, which is it's going to be kind of a, hey, this team is still in the national championship hunt. This team is not. If you win it or lose it, kind of thing. It's going to be just wild to see you hit the ground running big time right there. If you were able to, because I think I have the order right there. I think you open up in Wyoming. I think your home opener is against the Oregon Ducks. So and they're I think Brett McMurphy had them ranked, I think 8th or 10th or 11th, somewhere around in there. So I mean, there's going to be a lot of expectations about Oregon, and like in most cases. So anyway, just it should be a fun time.
Yeah, I can't wait to get to it. You got Wyoming September 2nd and the Ducks, as you mentioned, for your home opener right back here the following week in Lubbock, September 9th. We're talking September 9th. January 10th, just to give you an idea of how excited we are for round 2 with Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders. But I got to tell you, I'm also excited for big-time opportunity coming up from Ames, Iowa, for Mark Adams and company. This is just the kind of situation you could regain some footing from if you're able to be successful. And, man, that is a large, large if. Chris, appreciate the time as always, man. Enjoy the call from Hilton Coliseum and hopefully something to enjoy on the floor as well.
Yeah, fingers are crossed, man. I just hope these kids fight. It will not be easy winning on the road, and this league is never easy. But, man, you're about a 6.5 point underdog tonight, so we'll see what they come up with. And we'll see who is available tonight. That may be the biggest key. So, yeah, enjoyed it. Keep hope alive, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
And that keep hope alive, especially for all Red Raider Bids basketball players listening to the program, which I know they all do. So take it to heart, and thanks for being out there, making Locked On Texas Tech your first listen every day on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And make sure you check out Locked On Podcast Network's brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball. Everything you need to know about college hoops, all in one stop. That's Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. For the only Chris Lovell, I'm Casey Cowan. Thanks for joining us once again on Locked On Texas Tech. We will see you tomorrow for another round. We'll be chopping up Red Raiders and Cyclones. We'll see how it goes down and discuss it with you on the next episode of Locked On Texas Tech.